Y'all, I think I just had one of the best, most profound, most meaningful experiences I've ever had in my life this past weekend. I don't say that flippantly or hyperbolically. Legitimately, these past few days have been some of the most meaningful of my life, and I kind of want to share it with all of you and also geek out and nerd out with all of you, because if you haven't guessed from the background here, and I also announced it in previous videos and on my Twitter and all that stuff where I've been kind of freaking out about it, these past few days I visited Star Trek Mission Chicago in Chicago, which was the official Star Trek convention and the first convention that they've had after the pandemic started, and also my first ever Star Trek convention that I have ever visited in my life. Yeah, I know, it weirds me out too. A Trekkie as big as me has never been to a Star Trek convention, but I've never been able to afford it or be able to go to it, but I've never been able to afford it or have the time to go to one before now, and while I've been to many conventions, believe me, many conventions, this is the first one that was like just a Star Trek focused one and just gave me a chance to revel in the thing that not only am I a geeky nerdy dork about, but what inspires me and makes me have joy at the world and gave me my values and just makes me feel seen and something that I just really love. Star Trek just means the world to me. I know I keep it on the DL on this channel. I don't really advertise it all that much on this channel that I'm a big Trekkie. Spoilers if you're new here. I talk about it literally all the time. And so to get to the chance to go to this convention was super exciting to me, and this experience at the convention lived up to every expectation that I had for it, and also blew it well out of the water. Some of the things that I experienced these past few days honestly have inspired me and changed my life. It really just reminded me of why I love who I am, why I love doing what I do, why I love Star Trek, why I love community, why I love so many things. And I might cry during this video sharing it, but I just want to share all of it with you. And there's a lot of stories to tell, like so many stories, some nerdy, fun, geeky stuff. If you're a Trek fan, I also have some goodies for you in terms of things to talk about. So let's get into it. I just want to share this experience because I want to immortalize it in some way because of how meaningful it was to me. Oh, and also, I will show you the, like, knickknacks and toys and things that I got, because I got a literal pile just off camera right over there of, like, really cool things. Believe me, there's some Star Trek Enterprise stuff. It's very cool. It'll be fun. And also, I'll share photos and stuff right here, and also some things that I learned about Star Trek coming up and things like that. It'll be a lot of fun, so let's get into it. Okay, so I'm gonna just kind of go through everything chronologically, but there was a lot, so I hopefully won't miss anything, but let's just get started. So I flew in on Thursday night, got into Chicago. It's my first time in Chicago, by the way. Chicago, O'Hare Airport, it's ridiculous. Find better ways to figure out how to point people to baggage claim, because I was lost for like a hot minute in that damn airport. So I am officially in Chicago now, and in case anyone was wondering what I'm here for, I got my mask, got the uniform, got my little Star Trek bag on here. So, I think I'm prepared. I think I'm prepared for this thing. But regardless, I figured out O'Hare, I figured out a little bit of Chicago's public transport system, and got to my hotel nearby the convention center and met up with a friend of mine who I was visiting the con with, and we decided to like check out the town, see what all the Trekkies, the like cool Trekkies were doing. So we went over to near the convention center and popped into one of the hotel bars, I believe the Marriott bar is where we went, and we walked into the bar that was there, and it was just full of Trekkie dorks, and I was like, oh, I'm about to get drunk with a bunch of Trekkies, like, I'm here for this. And immediately, and this is going to be a recurring theme throughout this video, but immediately upon entering the bar, I met two wonderful people that I knew from the Trekkie community. One of the crew from Women at Warp, which is a fantastic Star Trek podcast, which I absolutely love. I've been on it a few times. It's literally my favorite podcast in all of Star Trek. They are so wonderful, and I'll talk more about them later because I was on a panel with them. But I saw one of their members. She came up to me, gave me a big hug. We had the same earrings on. It was wonderful. And then the other person I met was Starfleet Boy, who is another fellow Star Trek YouTuber, and one of the sweetest human beings that I've ever had the privilege to know, like just the sweetest, most affectionate smile and man that I have met in my life. And we talked for a hot minute and it was so wonderful. And then my friend and I just sat down, we drank drinks, had pizza. It was a really good time, but we were both very tired. We knew we also had a very long day. So after that, we went back to our hotel, got to sleep, and we were ready for the next day. And oh boy, everybody, this next day, oh, I thought it was the best day of my life, but it was eclipsed by the very next day. But let's just talk Friday for now. So first things first, we woke up very, very early to get to the convention center to go get our badges. My badge kind of got lost in the mail or probably got stolen. I've had been problems with people stealing packages in my apartment lately, which is annoying. Regardless, I had to go pick up my badge.
Y'all, I'm here, and there's a bunch of, Trekkie nerds here, and I'm very excited about it.
And then we went and waited in line for the floor to open, and we got to see all the cosplay there. I didn't take a lot of cosplay pictures, unfortunately. I took some video, which you're hopefully seeing on the screen right now. But some of my favorite cosplay that I saw was like a Starfleet officer Jedi. There was someone who was literally in like a full bird outfit of the counselor from Star Trek Lower Decks. A personal favorite cosplay of mine too was there was someone cosplaying Sybok from Star Trek V, who was the most ridiculous character in all of Star Trek. And one of the best things was just wearing but he was just wearing Sybok's robe. And at one point he opened up his robe and he just had these boxer briefs on. And I'm like, oh my god, Sybok in boxer briefs. Best thing ever. There was so many creative cosplays throughout the weekend that I'm not gonna be able to remember all of, but they were all wonderful. So I was just checking those out with my friend. So that was fun, but then we got on the showroom floor, and let me tell you, I got on this floor, and this thing was like a Trek church, so many Trek nerdy stuff. There was so many booths. Hopefully I have the video playing of me walking through everything and showing you all the stuff, just filled with Trekkie merchandise, nonsense, and people and things like that. It was just so freaking wonderful. My heart was so full, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm gonna have to try to not destroy my bank account on everything here. Toughest thing to do, again, there is a pile of stuff that I bought right there. We'll get to it by the end of the video. However, to pause the positivity for just a hot second here, one thing I do need to address, because I did a whole other video on it, but one of the biggest disappointments about this con, and really the only disappointment to my mind, was that the con was sponsored by an NFT thing that they're doing within Star Trek. Again, I did a whole video on it. It was very disappointing, but what it meant for the con was there was this big booth with NFTs right near the front of the convention center. And I will say, it is a perfect metaphor for what NFTs were, because this booth was big and loud and flashy. You could literally not walk around the convention center without hearing the rumble of this damn thing making noise. And I will say, inside of it, incredibly cool. Again, there should be video here, but it looked like a freaking holodeck that you could go into, and it had these cool AR walls. It was like, oh my damn, I want to go into the holodeck and have Moriarty become sentient and try and kill me. It would probably be a good time. But of course, the biggest, flashiest, most annoying, loud, energy wasting booth in the entire convention was the NFT booth. And also, if you went into it, it gave you nothing for your experience. It was big and flashy and loud and gave you nothing but made you spend a shit ton of money. Meanwhile, the entire booth was surrounded by all these merchandise tables from people who are actually Trekkies, actually trying to build up the community and build up and do cool things. And actually, if you spent your money there, which again, capitalism sucks, these things are probably overpriced as well. But if you actually spent your money there, you got cool things that were tangible and made by someone who actually cared. The NFT booth was a perfect freaking metaphor for NFTs, and I saw many people on Twitter rightfully flipping them off because it is a scam. I did a whole video on it. Go watch the video if you want my deeper opinions on it. I also know there's some disappointment with some of these Star Trek actors having been used to promote NFTs, and I shared my thoughts on that on Twitter as well. There's a lot of nuance there to discuss that, so go check that out. And that's the last negative thing I'm going to talk about with this panel, but screw NFTs. Anyways, moving past the negativity, some other cool things that were on the floor where they had all the skulls from Star Trek Picard Season 2, Episode 2, the ones that apparently me or evil universe Picard had killed. I went and looked at this thing and I'm like, oh my god, there's Martok's skull, there's Zek's, but my favorite has to still be Skull Dukat. See, Skull Dukat, get it? Instead of Gul Dukat, it's Skull Dukat. It's fucking Gul Dukat's skull on a Pike. Who can't be freaking nerded out about that?
Bajoran workers, your attention, please.
Also, I didn't know, but there's apparently a hole in Cardassian foreheads. Apparently you can just push down on their little spoon part of their heads and just this little soft spot. It's a little weird. But that was cool. But the coolest thing that they had there was an installation for Star Trek Strange New Worlds, the upcoming Captain Pike show that I'm so freaking pumped for. More on that later because I'll talk about the stuff that I learned from the panel about that show. But if you go into it, they had all this costumes and little knickknacks from the show and little bits and spoilers spoilers here and there of things around there, but super, super cool. I should share some video from in that right now.
Hey there, Daddy Pike. It's my gay daddy. It's fine. It's fine. He's right here. He's chilling. You're gonna without a face. You don't need a face as long as he has a beard. That's all I need. I'm here with my Vulcan boy. Look at that. Look at my Vulcan boy. I might be a little gay, because this is a space pirate. This is a gay space pirate, and you're not going to tell me anything differently.
Yes, I'm here for the gay space pirates. It might be a little gay. Also, they didn't give any clues, but I'm so curious what the hell this dress is about in the show. Like, I'm very curious what episode that whole dress is gonna be going on. Makes me very excited for the show because it looks super, super weird.
I want to sexualize Seven, but like, what's going on with her butt right there? Sorry, Seven butt.
She's fully shit.
And that was most of like the big stuff on the show floor. There was a few other things here and there throughout the weekend, but those are sort of the big, most important things. So before I get into like the panels and all the cool specific stories that I have about the weekend, one thing that I do wish to share is that throughout the entire weekend, there were so many of you that came up to me and just stopped me and said, Jessie, I'm a big fan of your channel. You asked me for photos and selfies and things like that, and I just want to say, and I'll sort of connect this with something else that I was feeling the entire weekend towards the end of this video, but I cannot tell you how much all that meant to me. To have people share kindness and just their thanks for the videos that I do. And I want to thank all of you for sharing your kindness and for supporting me and for being so wonderful. It meant the world to me. Something that you forget is that as a YouTuber, I'm kind of just in a room making videos kind of by myself. And this is the first time I actually got to go out into the world and feel... I don't want to say necessarily impact because I don't want to aggrandize myself, but just feel that my videos actually went to people and not just comment sections and internet and Twitterdom. It was people that watch this stuff, and to see that the things that I make are communicating with people and resonating with people, it meant the world to me. And I might cry right now. I'll talk more about that later on because I want to touch upon it, but it meant a lot to me, so thank you very much to everyone who stopped me and said kind things and did photos and things like that. But with that being said, let's get into the nerdy stuff and like the specific stories that I had for the weekend. One of the first things that I got to do was I was very kindly asked by Bruce Gibson of the Positively Trek podcast, one of my other favorite Star Trek podcasts, to be on a panel for Star Trek books and comics. I was absolutely honored to be on this panel. I was on the panel with John Jackson Miller and Dayton Ward, who are two Star Trek authors who I've been reading for decades now. As many of you know, I am a huge Star Trek book fan, have over 100 Star Trek books on a shelf, big Star Trek book nerd. I review every single Star Trek book that comes out. I love these guys. I've been following them for so long. So to be on a panel with these people that make, honestly, one of my favorite pillars and corners of the Star Trek universe, because I think some of the best stories in Star Trek are from the novels, by the way. Just saying it. So to be on a panel with both of them was not only just like an honor and cool, but like was very weird because I'm like, why am I on this panel? Well, I mean, I'll shout about how much I love the novels all day long, but like these are the people that make this stuff. But I know they appreciated my perspective too because I got to share why I loved their books and their work and how much I think Star Trek novels are really one of the coolest corners of Trekdom that often gets forgotten and overshadowed. And this is not an insult at any of the shows because I love the shows to death, obviously, but I think some of the best storytelling in the Trek universe is in the novels, whether it be all the way back to like the novels in the 70s and get Spock Must Die and the insanity that is that stuff. So you get the crazy weirdness, or you can get some really just storytelling that you didn't necessarily get to get in more episodic television like TNG. You get to see characters like Worf and Picard and all of these characters grow, and then also new characters like Teresa Chen, who I adore, and everyone like. So there's some great stuff I think in the novels. And also, I should at least say that I technically am a Star Trek author. I'll be very open about that. I have technically written character sheet designs for the Star Trek Discovery pack for Star Trek Adventures, which is the tabletop RPG. So yes, I have been paid to write Star Trek. I know, I'm a shill. Being honest with all of you, like, the money that I got paid for that was not a lot, would barely pay for, like, a goodish dinner, but I did it because I loved it and I think they do really cool work and I was honored to be asked to do that sort of thing. So just being open about that. I technically am a Star Trek author, but like not really. But it was just very cool to be on the panel with them. And also a shout out to Chrissy DeClerc, who runs the Infinite Diversity podcast, who's also on the panel. She and Bruce were also wonderful and just like me were just sharing a love of the Trek novels and being like, these people, like, pay attention to them. Also at the panel, by the way, it should be mentioned that they announced a Star Trek Strange New Worlds book, which I am so pumped about, and I also had this little tidbit to offer for my suggestion for the book cover. So my pitch for your cover art should be like those romance novels where like his shirt is just open. Yeah. And he's like riding a horse.
Yeah, you know, it would fit.
There is a scene, isn't there?
Well, there are quite a few scenes.
Sadly, they did not go with my book cover design. They went with their normal Star Trek stuff. And I'm just saying, Pike riding a horse with his shirt open would have been a much better choice. And then that day I attended a few other panels, some normal stuff that you would see at cons and conventions like that. But one of the big panels that I attended was the Star Trek Enterprise panel, because you know, this girl, big Enterprise dork, I had to attend the Star Trek Enterprise panel. They had Connor Trinneer, Dominic Keating, and Anthony Montgomery from the show. And it was just so nice to see these three boys up on stage doing their stuff. It was really wonderful. They're very chill people.
We were doing movies because they didn't do movies with DS9. They didn't do movies for Voyager. So they told me that the fans love Star Trek, and you guys are going to be here for at least 7 years, and you're going to be doing movies and everything. And you guys know how that all turned out. So
98 episodes. Well, let's talk about that. So when the show ended, how were you guys feeling about that it didn't go
Hold
the
on,
distance?
Man. You just went from the beginning to the end.
Well, we're going to hop around.
Good Lord.
I'm trying to make this
Slow
a fluid
down.
conversation.
Let's talk about some other things first.
Okay, all right.
We'll get to the end.
But one thing that I do want to point out with this panel is that Anthony Montgomery, who played Travis Mayweather, one of the most misused and not even shown main cast members in all of Star Trek, was like the most energetic and like over the top, wonderful, like amazing humans on the panel.
Lyrics out.
Really?
Do you? Yes. There were lyrics originally, and they took them out.
That was probably
for
a publishing
everybody that
thing.
bitches about it, do your research. I'm not even a Trekkie, and I know that. Come on.
I think I heard it for the first time.
And it was just so cool to see him. He was absolutely fantastic. And so after that panel, one of the things at the con is they have all the Trek actors on these sort of back walls that you can kind of just sort of walk up to them and see them. And they're all pretty open because people are just sort of milling about, especially on a Friday where it had sort of the lowest attendance because it wasn't the weekend. You could kind of just go up and have like a decently long chat with these folks. And so I went up to Connor, Dominic, and Anthony, who were all sort of sitting together. And, you know, I'm being like the nervous, weird little Trekkie tourist, like,
hi, you were like my heroes when I was a little kid.
And then Dominic Keating's like, no, don't start with this kid stuff. I'm not William Shatner age up in here. I'm like,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to make you feel old, but I was just a little kid. I watched Star Trek Enterprise, it was my favorite thing.
I hopefully wasn't coming across that like that dorky, but I just expressed to them my love of them and what all three of them meant to me growing up and what Star Trek Enterprise meant to me growing up. I really do love and appreciate the show. It was my week-to-week Star Trek show growing up, and I just adored it. But the best part was I turned to Anthony Montgomery, because this was after the panel, and I said to him, you were a forgotten treasure on Star Trek Enterprise. I just want you to know how amazing you were. And after I said that, Anthony Montgomery just turns to Dominic Keating, and he says, you see, I was a treasure. It was just so perfect. He was absolutely wonderful. Anthony Montgomery, a true gem of a human being. They all were. And also, speaking of gems of human beings, Wil Wheaton was there. I didn't get a chance to say hi to him, but I heard from a bunch of my friends who did go up to say hi to him that he was one of the kindest, most warmest human beings that people got to talk to at the convention. And I will say here, hearing stories from his own panel and the way that he's been sort of being such a great advocate throughout the past few months and years of his life, and just being in the Trek fandom, hosting things like the Trek After Show that they do over on the YouTube channel. It is very much appreciated how much of an activist and just really wonderful person that Wil Wheaton is. Apparently someone asked Wil Wheaton a question at his panel about like what it's like with some people feeling like, oh, you know what, like cis dudes feeling uncomfortable with all the queerness in Trek and things like that. And apparently Wil Wheaton was like, look, cis white dudes like myself, we need to be made uncomfortable. And I'm like, Wil Wheaton, you are a fantastic human. It was so great to hear that. So I loved hearing stories about him. I also saw people like Kate Mulgrew and Doug Jones like constantly wandering the floor, giving hugs to people, being super nice. But from my personal experience, I actually went up and spoke to Ian Alexander, Noah Averbach-Katz, and Mary Chieffo, the three actors from Star Trek Discovery who were all kind of together. And as many of you know, I mean, I've done stuff with them on my YouTube channel, interviewed them. Mary Chieffo's been in a video reading some Kirk/Spock fan fiction and stuff like that. So I already kind of knew them a little bit. You know, I don't want to go so far as saying we're like close best buddies, but they were all really, really wonderful. Remember me, we got to talk, and I got to share with them how wonderful they are as human beings, and I just absolutely adore them with all my heart and soul. And they were all so wonderful back and kind. I got to hug them all, and it was just very, very sweet. And they honestly are inspirations, and I just really adored getting to meet up with them and talk with them, all in person for the first time, even though I've spoken to them before. So that was so incredibly meaningful. They were all the best people. Like, I cannot tell you how amazing they were. But one of the best experiences that I had was with someone who I had never met before, and it was only very briefly. But David Ajala, who's also from Star Trek Discovery, was sitting there, and I just went up to him right as he was about to leave. It was like right when the convention was closing down, and I sort of walked up to him, and I just sort of wanted to say, David Ajala, I think you are just an amazing human being. The energy and positivity and chemistry that you put out onto the show is just so meaningful to me. And he was getting up to walk away. And like, I thought he was just going, oh, thank you, and then walk away, and which would have been perfectly fine. I'm the annoying dork who's catching him right at the end of a very long day for him. But no, he stops and turns to me, takes my hand.
Thank you for this moment. I will be thinking of this on our 12, 14-hour shoot days. It will help carry me through.
It was like the most sincerest thing as he like looks in my eyes, and like, I know he's an actor, but I was like, thank you, David Ajala. Again, such sweet humanity. And again, I'm sure you probably won't remember me at all over the next few days, whatever. But just the fact that he took the time to like make this moment meaningful for me was very, very sweet. And I also heard stories about like how someone at the Star Trek Discovery panel like shared how much he meant to him, having suffered, you know, some mental health issues and things like that while watching the show. And David Ajala apparently jumped off the stage and just gave the man a hug. So just wonderful human beings across the frickin' board. And so afterwards I went out to the hotel bar that we were nearby and just ran into so many wonderful people. And this goes to another wonderful point that I really loved about this convention and just reminded me about the Trek community, is that there's such a big Trek community online, both in like Twitter spaces and things like that. And Star Trek is so big that it has all these people that are involved in it and known in it and like influences so many things in the world. And yet it's not necessarily like Star Wars, which is like this huge thing run by Disney, big corporate thing. I mean, obviously there's corporate problems with Paramount and CBS and all that stuff. I mean, capitalism sucks, but it's not this huge thing. And so like the community at this con, like you just kept running into people that you knew. And I know I'm sort of involved as like a big YouTuber person, so I probably know more than the average person. But like, just like being like, oh my God, I know your face from Twitter. Oh my God, I know you. It was just like running into people like Heather Ray, who is such a wonderful activist on Twitter and things like that. Randy Frank, who runs Lambda Quadrant, who I'll just talk a little bit more in a little bit. But like running into all these people at the bar afterwards was so fantastic. And it all goes to this point that I'm hopefully making. This is just day one of how this con started to make me feel human again. I really started to feel like I was a human being at this con again. I feel like, you know, I've been stuck in a house for so long, especially as a YouTuber, where I kind of am very isolated a lot of the time. But I think all of us has felt this over the past 2 years because of the pandemic. Being out there with people, well, there was a lot of social anxiety. I'll talk about that in a minute too. I have a story with that. Just being around people and getting to see humanity and kindness and connection again in places like this, I was like, oh, this is what this feels like. And just knowing that it was in a Trek community where like every time you spoke to someone, you always had something in common to talk with them about and be passionate about. But also this ethos of, because Star Trek is about infinite diversity and combinations, about taking delight in other people and differences of experience and life forms, everyone was just so accepting and wonderful and kind. And oh, it was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. It really meant a lot to me. I was out till 3 a.m. just talking with people. Some specific people that I'll talk about more in a moment, but just talking. It was fantastic. But of course, 3 a.m, come back, fall flat on my face on my bed, and get ready for Saturday morning, where I knew the Star Trek Lower Decks panel was happening first thing in the morning. And if all of you know me, my favorite modern Star Trek show right now that I adore with all of my heart is Star Trek Lower Decks. So I'm like, I have to be at this panel. It is the thing that I need to be at. And I was not disappointed. I woke up and was like barely awake. I was like, please, why? Why is energy? Why is waking? But I dragged myself to the Lower Decks panel, and we got there. I also met, as I was walking through the seats, one of the moderators from my Discord chat in Patreon, so mwah, kiss to you. I won't say your name because I didn't get your permission to say your name, but mwah, you know who you are. I adore you. But sat down at the panel, And this panel was the best frickin' thing that I could ever tell you. So on the panel, I had Mike McMahon, it had Jack Quaid, Noel Wells, Jerry O'Connell, and Tawny Newsome, all cast members and the creator of the show. And the cast members were all wearing the actual uniforms of their characters. And I knew this, but it's just funny how much the cast members like literally look like their like animated counterparts, even though they don't necessarily need to show up. Like Jack Quaid literally had the purple like Boimler wig on. It was hilarious.
And finally, Tawny Newsome is Ensign Beckett Barrier!
And as a fan of the show and having actually interviewed and talked with Mike McMahon as well, one of the things that really just made me so happy for them and like proud for them, even though like who am I to be proud of them, but I was just so proud of them because I know that this was the first time that they all got to be in person around Trek fans in the pandemic. They released the show during the pandemic. They haven't really gotten a chance to experience the love and appreciation for the show that I know so many Trekkies have for Lower Decks. And it was just so wonderful. Like, they got the crowd going, Lower Decks! Lower Decks!
Spirit! Community! Lower Decks! Lower Decks! Lower Decks!
Like mimicking Mariner from the very first episode. It was just... oh, it was great, and I loved it. Some other quick highlights from that, like Jack Quaid did the Boimler pose, like doing, like, putting his legs up, like the pose that inspired my entire Sex and Star Trek video, he did, and I love that he was game for that. The moderator of the panel, like, gave him a plate, the Tom Paris plate, and he just, like, hugged it with all his might. Another great moment was, like, when the entire cast, like, took their little Geordie Bears that they were selling at the convention, like, one of these little guys, and they, like, all put it against Jerry O'Connell's face, which is very fun. And you could just tell that all of them were just vibing and really enjoying being around each other and being in this room and just really loved just the whole experience of being at the con. It was just so wonderful. Again, there was so much I could share and talk about with that panel. They also shared a teaser with Lower Decks, and it was so great. And then they also shared a scene from season 3 of Lower Decks, which they have not released online, so I will not spoil it for you. But it was a very, very cool scene, and it just makes me so like, oh, I cannot wait for that episode. Again, I don't want to spoil it for you because part of it's just the fun of the surprise, but one of the best parts of it was, and Mike McMahon asked for this, was that he never got to hear a whole crowd like listen to the Star Trek Lower Decks theme song, and so we all sort of sang along with it with him, and it was just so much fun and so much joy in that experience, and I just absolutely loved it. But again, that teaser, very exciting. You should be very excited for Star Trek Lower Decks Season 3. It made me very, very like, oh, that's so good. They also threw out Geordie Bears into the crowd, which was a lot of fun. They also like did a contest to like give someone a weight that Jerry O'Connell had to like play up his character of Lower Decks. Apparently, Jerry O'Connell wanted to give a like 50-pound weight as make some poor person just carry around a 50-pound weight that he had signed and the crew had signed, but they said that was too mean, so he just had like a 5-pound one, but that was absolutely hilarious. The other thing too is it was really nice to see Noel Wells there as well, who plays Tendi. I know she hasn't been in a ton of panels and stuff for Star Trek, so it was just really nice to get to see her be on this panel and just hear all the love and appreciation she has for that people have for Tendi. I mean, I myself, Tendi, as much as I love Lower Decks and everyone on that show, Tendi is my kindred spirit, and I adore that character to death. Honestly, has become one of, if not my favorite character in all of Star Trek. So to get to see her at the panel meant a lot to me. And I actually had to speak to her later on the next day at the con. I didn't want to overwhelm her, but I was just like, I love Tendi. She's great. She's wonderful. I just want you to know that. So absolutely wonderful human being who I was so glad to see there. But then after the panel, probably one of the most surreal moments probably in my life happened. So afterwards, I was still kind of a little bit tired and a little bit delirious, so I was like, oh, I'll just wander the floor a little bit to kind of work up my energy and everything. I had the Star Trek Lower Decks cosplay on because of course I would, and I was walking by a booth, and I was stopping to look at some stuff, and two fans of the YouTube channel like stopped by and caught me and just said, hey, Jessie, we really want a picture, it's good to meet you, you're so cool, and they were so kind, and we were just talking, and they were very, very sweet. I saw them several times over the con, and they were like the most wonderful humans. But then all of a sudden, as we were talking, this person comes out of nowhere and just runs up right up next to me and has like a camera and just starts snapping photos like, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm a big fan of your channel. I was like, who the hell is this asshole coming up to me and just like getting really quickly without even a minute? And I look over and it's freaking Mike McMahon. Yeah, the creator of Star Trek Lower Decks. And being honest, I've interviewed McMahon, we've talked a little bit here and there, but like to have him like run up to me, this guy who has created this show that means so much to me, is honestly like one of, if not my favorite show on television right now, come up to me and just like get to meet him and hug him and talk to him for a minute. And I got to talk to him and his wife Brooke, and also Brad, who was one of the producers on the show, was there as well, and he gave me a little Shaq spin. But it was just so wonderful. I had a surreal moment, but like he was freaking out at me because he has watched the channel and like reviews and stuff. So he's a fan of me and I'm a huge fan of him. And then there were also the people that were fans of me just sort of watching Mike and me meet. And so we're all kind of freaking out at each other in this weird like freak out moment. And I'm like tired and like overwhelmed, and also like my anxiety and imposter syndrome's going through the roof because I'm like, who am I? Like this weird dork making videos on the internet, and Mike McMahon of all people, and also like people telling me that I'm a good creator. Like who the hell am I? It was just like I was overwhelmed. Like legitimately, my poor neurodiverse brain was like overstimulation. I was just freaking out internally. Hopefully, I was cool, calm, collected Vulcan outside. Probably not. But it was so crazy and overwhelming. It was just a very surreal moment. But it meant so much to me to have it, to finally get a chance to meet Mike McMahon, who again, guy who created a show that means so much to me. We spoke for a few minutes, and he was absolutely wonderful. Great person, great human being. And hopefully I'll get more chances to interview him and talk to him and things like that. But it meant so much to me to talk to him. I mean, he is honestly like, he's doing what I want to do. I want to write and work on Star Trek one day. That is my dream. And so to like meet the person who's doing the thing that I want to do one day, to create and work and write, and make worlds like this in this weird, irreverent way, was cool. It was so cool. Surreal as all hell though. I don't think I've entirely still processed it, and it's not even the weirdest thing that happened that weekend. Anyway, so that happened. That was ridiculous. But then the next thing that happened was I was actually on the Women at Warp panels. No! So like I said, the Women at Warp is a wonderful podcast that I love and adore, and I love all the women on it. They had a panel called The First and Onlys where we were talking about the characters in Star Trek who were like the first and onlys of like being in Star Trek and Starfleet. So like Worf being a Klingon, Spock being the first like half Vulcan in Starfleet, Nog being one of the first Ferengis in Starfleet, things like that, and what those characters represent mean to many minority groups, what their experiences say. It was a really wonderful panel. I believe the Women at Warp recorded it, hopefully, so that'll probably be going up on their podcast feed if you want to hear my thoughts. But it was so wonderful. It became standing room only at one point, which is crazy considering that it was also overlapping at the same time as the Star Trek Discovery panel, which upset me a little bit because I wanted to see Sonequa Martin Green and the rest of that crew, because Discovery is the queerest Star Trek in the world, and I adore it and love it with all of my heart. So I was very disappointed and sad at that there was an overlap, not necessarily in the panel or anything. The panel was great. Again, standing room only, which again, ridiculous considering the Discovery panel was going on. And it was just a very real conversation. Like there were jokes and stuff, but we talked a lot about like what experiences of like Worf or Michael Burnham on Star Trek or Nog, and many others like meant to us, and many minority experiences, and like the cross section of what that means to many people to watch Star Trek and can read ourselves into these alien metaphors, but also how the show literalizes a lot of that and how meaningful that is. And the fact that like so many Trekkies were down for that. Like I talked about the trans experience. Kennedy and Eliza, who were on the panel, talked about being black and what that sort of comes into the conversation with Star Trek, and like being women and being neurodiverse. Like all of that stuff got brought up and discussed in the panel, and so many people were just responding and clapping and like just being so wonderful in the crowd and responding to all of that. And it just goes to speak to something that I'm going to talk about more in a little minute, just what Trek fandom means, because it's not just love of a show, it's love of talking about important issues and meaningful issues that affect us all, and being welcoming of those discussions, even when they're hard, even when they're critical of the shows themselves. Like we criticize Worf a hell of a lot, even though we do love him. But it just like being able to have those rough conversations about something we love, and that thing that we love, enabling conversations beyond it, in this space, was so cool. Again, it's why I love Trek, because it's not just a weird nerdy sci-fi show, though it is that. It's more than that. It is values beyond that. And the fact that this was the panel that got like so many people there to engage with it makes me so pleased, and that I could be an out and proud trans person on this panel talking about trans issues, and the entire crowd just being supportive of that. And you know what, I have more other things to go back in time, but I'll talk about this now because I'm kind of on this thread. But another panel that I went to was the Tractivism Panel, about how we turn Trek into activism, into actual tangible things that we can do. That panel, I wasn't on the panel, but a lot of people that I knew on the panel were there, like Noah Everbatch-Katz, who's talked about his short film Type 1, which is a short film about diabetes and representing diabetes. I interviewed him on this channel for that as well. Heather Ray, who does great work on Twitter and activism on Twitter to bring positivity to the Trek community and bring people like Trek Gives Back, which is her initiative. Randy Frank, who runs the Lambda Quadrant, which is an LGBTQ Star Trek organization, which helps try to create not only inclusive queer spaces within Trek fandom, but bring other people into queer spaces as well, which is something that I try to do on my own channel, where I talk about queer issues in a way that lets everyone into the space, into the discussion. And while it was definitely queer, we are a queer space on my channel, but it's about like letting everyone into that space to feel comfortable that like queerness isn't something that needs to be othered or off to the side. And we should also have our own spaces that are just for us, but it also can be an experience that everyone relates to, gets to experience and be a part of, and be welcoming in. That's the spirit of Trek, right? To revel in infinite diversity and combinations, but also appreciate being diverse and different and being welcome within that, but also knowing their experiences are not your own, and that's okay and good. Anyways, Randy Frank was great. That whole panel was great. And it just spoke to me again, the acceptance and wonderfulness of this community. Star Trek Discovery, like I've said, is the queerest Star Trek show of all time, and I've talked about in numerous videos how much that it naturalizes and normalizes queerness in Star Trek, and it still means so much to me, with all of my heart, that my favorite fandom, the thing that means so much to me, is not only welcoming of queerdom, though queerdom has always been a part of it. I've done numerous videos about how queer fandom has always been a part of Star Trek, and uplifted Star Trek, because queer people do resonate so much with it. But the fact that like it is now just an accepted and like central pillar of a franchise that means so much to me, like seeing Ian Alexander, Blue Del Barrio, all these other queer people like Anthony Rapp, Wilson Cruz, Tig Notaro, all these other people in Trek being queer and out. 7 of 9, you know, Raffi in Star Trek Picard, Mariner in Star Trek Lower Decks, things like that. It just is so cool. It's so meaningful. It speaks to the core franchise. It speaks to me as a queer person, as an individual, as someone who loves these values. To have a panel like Tractivism being like, how do we take Star Trek and make it more? For example, and also like Chase Masterson, who played Lita on Star Trek Deep Space Nine. She runs the Pop Culture Hero Coalition, which like does like really good activism in the community. She was on the panel, and just seeing this activism being perpetuated, the values of Trek being perpetuated out into the world, just so inspires me, and it reaffirms my want for over the next year to really recommit to making sure I don't even just use my channel to talk about trans issues, but to also uplift other people within other communities and share their voices, use my platform to share their voices and perspectives, and also try to do more with this platform. Not just be like weird Trekkie dork talking about issues, but like try and make sure it actually does more than that and does good in the world. It just really inspired me for that, and I made some connections there that hopefully I'll perpetuate in the future, to bring Trek values not only just to Trek, but make greater use in the world of them, and use my platform and my ability and who I am as a person to do even more beyond what I already do, talking about trans and LGBTQ and other important issues on this channel. That's a hope that I have for the future, and that panel just so inspired that in me, because it comes out of something that is so central to me, Star Trek. So to see that was wonderful. And by the way, speaking on LGBTQ people being finally like acknowledged and accepted and like being an important pillar of Star Trek, at the con, Jackie Cox, who's a famous drag queen from RuPaul's Drag Race, performed the first ever drag show at an official Star Trek con. Like, there's been numerous drag shows and queer Star Trek stuff all around, but this was the first time a drag show was performed at an official Star Trek convention, which again speaks to the evolving, you know, like just front and centerness of this franchise to put diversity forward. And it was just so wonderful, such a fun time to see that, and see Jackie Cox be there and being such a big Trekkie dork drag queen was so wonderful. And again, just goes to show how queerness is just being put front and center in this franchise, alongside many other communities like the Black community and other people of color and things like that. Just speaks to the franchise just evolving and growing in phenomenal ways, and the ways that it should be. But rewinding a little bit, earlier on in the day after the Women at War panel, I went and visited the Star Trek Strange New Worlds panel, because new Star Trek show, Captain Pike, my boy Captain Pike, I'm very excited about it. And so this is another panel, like in the main stage, that had Ethan Peck, who plays Spock, Anson Mount, who plays Pike, Rebecca Romaine, who plays Una, Celia Gooding, who played Uhura, and I believe that was it. Apologies if I missed someone who was also on the panel. And what I will say, to be honest with you, This was probably my least favorite of like the main stage panels that I attended, not because the show wasn't any good. They did show some cool stuff. They showed like this weird title sequence that made me think like I had eaten like an edible before coming in. It was really, really cool. And they also showed a scene, the first bridge scene of the show, which was very exciting, very cool, very, very, very excited for the show. I'm very, very pumped for the show. But what this panel did show to me as like a fan a little bit was how much care and attention Viacom CBS had on it, because the moderators' questions were very like canned questions, they sounded like. So like, this show's gonna be episodic. It was very like clearly like, oh, they want to make sure they get the right messaging out about this panel. And so you kind of see that. And then the other thing too was that a lot of the actors are a little bit stiff on stage in front of a field of Trekkies, and I get it. We're a bunch of Trekkie dorks at this con, and we can be a bit intimidating for how much like fervently we love this thing. But it was just like kind of a fun little like juxtaposition of like the Lower Decks crew, which while it was their first convention, they're like comedians, they're used to like crowd work and things like that. And then you also have like Discovery Panel with like David Ajala running out and hugging people in the crowd, and like from hearing stories from other people, like people being the entire Discovery cast being very open with the crowd, because they've been doing Star Trek for a while now. They kind of know the game, they know Trekkies, they know how intense we are, and that we're just loving and caring about all of them. The Strange New World people are new to the fandom, and so it's just very clear they're like, oh wow, these are Trekkies. This is, oh boy. So you can see that a little bit, and I'm sure they're wonderful people, and that they'll be like more open in future. And I'm sure they opened up plenty of other places in the panel, but it was just clearly on the panel. I was like, oh boy, this is Trekkies. That's the thing. But two things that I will point out about the panel that were particularly interesting to me was, first off, Anson Mount, Captain Pike himself, comes out and sits down in the panel, and they're about to announce that they're going to show us a scene from the show, first time that they're ever going to show it. And he just sits down and he grabs his microphone and goes,
So, here at conventions, it's a very special place where you get to be around other people and just share love, and special things happen here. You're special.
This man is speaking into his microphone to all of us like he is whispering in our ear. I was just straight up like, speak to me, Dad. Speak to me. Just saying, the man has a vibe, and it is chill as hell, and that was fun. Though I will say really quickly and briefly here, one thing the moderator did do, and the moderator did fine, especially considering I'm sure she had a ton of stuff from CBS Viacom that she had to sit upon, that she had to like touch upon and talk about. But one thing I was a little bit off-put by was, I make a lot of jokes on this channel, like sexualizing Captain Pike, being like, oh, I love his beard, he's so hot, Anson Mount's so hot, that like I want to see his chest open and things like that. Like, I make jokes about that, and like, haha, yes, we sexualize stuff, and yeah, I do find the character and Anson Mount to be a very particularly handsome man. But I did find it a little bit weird. The moderator at some points was like, oh, you're riding a horse. That's so sexy. To Anson Mount himself. And again, this is not a dig at the moderator. I am sure she does a fantastic job, and she did a fantastic job elsewhere throughout the panel. But it did, I'm just like, can we not sexualize the man to his face? It was just a little bit, we don't want to objectify people to their face. I just want to be very clear about that. Like, I do make jokes, and yes, I do find these people attractive, and it is kind of fun to have that element of like talking about sex within Star Trek, because it is something part of Gene Roddenberry's vision. Did a whole video on it. But it's very awkward to sexualize someone to their face like that. And I could tell, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but I could tell Anson Mount was a little bit uncomfortable with it. And so just a note to everybody. While I make jokes about it, let's not objectify people to their faces. It's not cool thing to do. I don't like it. I've had people do it to me as a trans person, sexualize me as like an object because I'm trans, and sexualize me in that way. And while I don't mind people, and be very clear, like all of you are allowed to joke and like sexualize me in comments and things like that. Like, I'm in on the joke. It's okay. Totally fine. I wear my boobs out in many videos. I know what I'm doing. But let's not necessarily do it when you're trying to have a conversation about someone's art and work and things like that. Just to point out. Again, not attacking the moderator, just a criticism of the thing. This does lead me to the second thing on the panel, though, that I was absolutely wonderful. I got to ask a question to the panel, because they asked people in the convention to ask questions, and so I ran up and tried to get my question asked. Because one of the things that I wanted to ask was to Celia Gooding, and I got to ask her, Celia Gooding being the actress who is going to play Ahura. Celia Gooding is non-binary. So they are playing Ahura, who is a very important character in Trek fandom, cisgender woman, very important to black women, women as well in general, as a character, but again, especially black women. And I wanted to ask them, like, what is it like being a non-binary person playing this character, and what does that mean to you? And how do you sort of bring that into the character? And they had such a wonderful response that was something along the lines of like, Uhura and I share the same culture as like black women, so there's that element of it, but also like, you know, I'm clearly, you know, have a femme presentation, but I also want to bring like sort of an edge to Uhura's gender expression. Not that gender expression is the only way gender exists, but it's part of it. And so allowing Uhura to like have that edge to her character that expresses a little bit of myself and who I am as a person is what I'm bringing to the role. I'm like, yes, I'm here for like more edge in the gender presentation of Ahura. So down for it. And also Wrecker Romaine talked about like being able to like wear a dress in action scenes as Una, while also getting to wear pants as well, which is something we talked about in the Section Star Trek video, right? About like how women also had to always wear the mini skirts and how that could be empowering in the 60s. In some ways is also still sexualizing of women. And so allowing women to like have that all sort of expression was wonderful. And also people were yelling for Ethan Peck as Spock to wear a dress. He should 100% wear a dress in the show. So that was absolutely wonderful. The other thing though with that is I asked I kind of asked the question tangentially, so you're gonna get 2 questions in, but it was essentially very similar because I asked Ethan Peck. As many of you know, I did a recent video about Spock being read as a gay character within Trek fandom and how important he was to many gay people to be read as both gay, asexual, bisexual, but also, I mean, he clearly read as straight as well. And so I just asked him that. I was like, what does it feel like to have all these different interpretations of the character, especially to me as a, you know, LGBTQ person? What does it mean to like do that while also trying to bring your own interpretations to the art? I thought it was a very thoughtful question. I think other people told me it was. Maybe I worded it weirdly, I don't know. But what I feel happened was Ethan Peck heard the question. He's like, what was the question? And he just seems so like, oh, what? Like, oh, gay people read themselves into Spock? And he seemed like a little bit of like a deer in the headlights.
I just do my job to do the work, to read the stuff, and I appreciate you reading your interpretations into it, and I just focus on the words.
And it was just very clear, like, he had no awareness of that at all, of like that sort of possibility. And I was just like, oh, you sweet summer child, you will learn. You will learn. But it was just kind of funny because it showed me like Celia Gooding, who is non-binary, very clearly when asked a question about being non-binary was like, had the answer, was very open and honest about it. And then Ethan Peck, who is a sweet human being, who I know is absolutely a wonderful human being from what I've heard all around, so not insulting in any way, shape, or form, but it was just very clear, like, cis dude ally, he was like, you're good, but I had no idea. So it was like, I don't know what's happening right now. So it was just a very, very funny dichotomy. So again, not insulting Ethan Peck, it was just a very clear deer in the headlights moment for him that I thought was very, very funny. But that sort of wraps out the con part of the day, but now we're getting to the part of this story that was part of the most meaningful thing to me, and honestly part of what will probably make me cry a little bit. But after the con, I went to the hotel bar, met up with Erin McDonald, who I mentioned before is the science advisor on the show, and had a lovely conversation with her and her fiance. 2 of the nicest human beings you will ever meet in your life. Absolute joy to get to know them and talk to them and get to know them better. Like, I talked to them several times throughout the con, and truly amazing people. But then after that, I was very kindly invited to a bar that a lot of the people that were working on the con, as well as a bunch of Star Trek people, like people who work on Star Trek, got to go to. I was very, very honored to be asked to attend that. And a couple things I'll say right up front before I talk about this. One, I'm not going to share what happened at the bar or anything. Don't worry, nothing like crazy happened, or like Jessie's now on Star Trek, none of that sort of stuff. So I just head that off if anyone's thinking that sort of thing. It was just a bar hanging out with some cool people. But I'm not going to share bar stories or anything like that, so not going to say anything about specifically what happened there, but I will share some things of what that experience meant to me. So be very clear up front like that. And then number 2, because I know there will be people out there who will take it this way, and I want to just head it off, even though I think it's dumb overall. This is not like, Jesse's a paid CBS shill. Like, no, they're just kind people who are weird dorks like me who also happen to work on Star Trek that like went to a bar. I got invited to it, and you know, I'm not getting paid or by anyone. I'm not doing it for the perks. Like, I will be critical of this franchise, even though I love it and want to work on it one day. I always want to be very open and firm in my values and what I am as a creator, and also wish to just be honest and open. So don't worry, I'm always gonna be critical, always gonna be honest, but I'm never gonna be hating. These are people who make cool creative stuff. And they're just people. And that's the thing ultimately that I want to get to with this experience. Again, not going to share the specific stories. When I was at the bar and I got to see all these people that like I look up to, incredibly so, both as activists, as creatives, as people doing things that I want to do one day that inspire me. And I got to see them all just be kind, caring, nice human beings. and I'm not going to name names who was there. I will say someone like Tawny Newsom, because she shared a photo out of the evening with the picture with me, so I'll use her. Tawny was just one of the kindest people that I've met. Very real human being, very kind human being, absolutely amazing. And like, it's the one thing that I want to like share with all of you. The reason that I like do the things that and the way that I talk about like Star Trek and stuff in this is a franchise that I'm very passionate about. But especially at this point in the franchise, I know that the people working on the franchise are people like me, who care very deeply about it, but who are just people trying their best to make these things. It was such a weird moment, because these people that I look up to and mean a lot to me were just all kind to me. Some of them had seen my videos and stuff and like just told me how much they liked my stuff. Like Tawny was very, very sweet and saying very sweet things about my channel and things like that, and many other people did too. And I had this weird moment of imposter syndrome and anxiety. I hopefully played it cool. Hopefully it was like, I'm cool, like I had my vest on. So I was looking like sexy Professor Vest Jessie. But I was just like, these are such amazing people doing such amazing work. Who am I? Like this weird dork. And as many of you know, I am on the autism spectrum. And this was also the first time I've been like in a bar since the pandemic happened, and also in a crowd since the pandemic happened. Like this weekend was the first time I was like out and about in like a big thing in a while. So like this imposter syndrome and my own social anxiety that normally exists were already heightened to a degree. But one thing that just like really was rough during that whole experience was, as an autistic person, it's hard for me to read emotions. And so I'm like with all these people that mean so much to me and I look up to, and just talking to them and things like that. When I can't read emotions, I've gotten better at this over the years, but because the pandemic happened, my training, my mental training to help assuage it disappeared. I have this automatic assumption, because I can't read emotions very well, that I assume dislike. And I don't think anyone disliked me. I don't think I was a bad person. It's just something my brain does. Like, I can't read emotions, must be bad. That's just what way my anxiety presents itself. So it's just this weird moment at that night of just being so self-conscious, and so feeling so weird in that moment. And afterwards, thinking on it and looking at it and just looking at that experience, like I sort of mentioned, what strikes me most is how that's all just nonsense. We're all just people trying to do our best in the world. And it was just so wonderful to just know that so many of the people on the thing that I love that work on it are kind, caring, weird people that just exist in the world and are very, very sweet. And are just as willing to have a very long conversation about Borg dork stuff, a rant about like, weird alien Star Trek stuff at a bar for very long. It was wonderful. And so, I came away from that with a lot of anxiety and imposter syndrome about like, why does anyone care about this weird person making weird stuff on the internet? But it also was a reminder of like, everyone's that. And the thing that I wish to say too with this, and what matters a lot to me, is like, we see so much toxic fandom out there today. There's so many people, I'm sure people in the comments will be like, not you, but I'm sure someone will be like, not my real Star Trek, hashtags, you're a CBS shill, these people suck, they don't really get Trek, they're not real fans. It's like, we dehumanize each other in these spaces, and I know so many of us have been terminally online for so long that that's sort of like how we default to understanding people making things and doing things and working on things and other people and other existences, and other experiences like trans people. We're so ready to dehumanize. But when you exist in a space and be near people and have that human interaction, you just remember why we care about each other, why we mean something to each other, why human beings are at our core empathetic, kind, caring, amazing people. So this toxicity online, people like hating on modern Trek, like, just know these are people making things that they hope connect with you, as I'm a person who makes things that hope I connect with you, and trying my best to make the world a better place. Sometimes badly, sometimes imperfectly, sometimes weirdly, but we're all just people trying our best to make the world a little bit better. At least a lot of us are. There are jerks, assholes who don't do that. But for the most part, people are just kind of caring. And it was just nice to have this moment and sort of have all this anxiety and stuff going on in my head. And it really mattered a lot to me to have that. It was honestly one of the coolest experiences of my life. And hopefully not the last. Like I said, I hope to have a long life ahead of me doing really cool stuff and making cool stuff and making cool things. But this was just, it was a nice reminder of humanity and connection and why I do the things that I do to try to create things in the world that are kind and caring. All that being said, let's go to the last day of the con. I'll try and make this quick because this video's gotten already way too long than I expected it to be. So, last day of the con. So for the last day, I actually showed up a little bit later because, as I mentioned, Lucian came to visit me, who I have not seen physically in a very long time. So we actually went and explored a little bit of Chicago, so I didn't come to the convention until a little bit later. But a few things that I did, though, is first thing that I did was I got a picture with Captain Janeway, Kate Mulgrew herself. Let me actually... Here it is. Here's the picture of me with Kate Mulgrew, like weirdly just hover handing, because you know they do these things with these pictures. You just like come in and take the picture and then run away. So you're like weirdly like hovering next to her, like, hi, I'm here. But she was very sweet and very kind. I like turned and said thank you for being such an inspiration, and you know you get like 2 seconds with these people. But she looked and said thank you. And I always appreciate that when you have people that like you only have 2 seconds with. Still try to make the moment meaningful because they know it's meaningful to you, and I'm sure they'll forget me, but they make the moment meaningful to you. I met celebrities, some in Star Trek, some leads of shows that are a little bit older in the franchise, let's just say, who don't do that work. So to see someone who does that, who deals with rabid amounts of fans, to still make that moment special, very sweet. So I will cherish this photo, but it is not the one that I will cherish the most, because I also got a picture with Jack Quaid and Tawny Newsome. Again, us being like doing sarcastic Vulcan salutes. I got to speak to them for a quiet moment there and just tell them how wonderful they are as human beings and how much they deserve to feel the appreciation from fans. And again, who am I to say that I'm proud of people, but I am so proud of them for just being, I might cry actually, sorry, apologies. It warmed my heart not to just be like, oh, these are Trekkie people doing, like, they're wonderful people. A lot of the people that I met that work on Trek, and a lot of people at the con, and I'll talk about that more too. I don't want to just say it was just the big famous people. There are just so many wonderful people, and I'm so glad and I'm so proud of them for getting to feel the appreciation that they rightfully deserve for the good work that they do. Not just on Trek, but in so many other areas, in activism and being kind, caring people. So it was very, this picture will be a cherished treasure of mine, to just remember how wonderful people they are. A couple other things that I did at the panel that day was Dungeons and Dragons. They did a D&D Dungeons and Dragons game with Noah Averbach Katz, Anthony Rapp, Mary Chieffo, Bonnie Gordon from Star Trek Prodigy, who's the voice of the computer in Star Trek Prodigy, and Ian Alexander. We did that. It was a very fun, very Critical Role type of D&D experience. They're absolutely wonderful, and it was really fun to watch. But that being said, that brings me to the final note of this, because I said earlier, I don't want this to just be about the big famous people, because what I love about Trek specifically, again, it's not Star Wars, right? It's not this big thing. It is a big franchise, and it has this big influence on the world. And yet, because it is about community and caring, explicitly in the text of the work, it is about striving to be better even though we never will be, but about finding community together and about being better together. What I love most about the con is not only how accessible and open the people behind the franchise are to all the fans. You can just walk up and talk to them, not just me, but everyone had the opportunity to go up to these people and just talk to them as human beings and see them as human beings. And they saw us as human beings, not just, oh, look at this fan, millions. This fandom is just big enough that it has impact and influences and changes the world, but small enough and open to community enough that everyone just feels equal within it. And the moment that will make me cry is afterwards, the con closed down, everything shut down. And turned off the lights. And I was crashing hard because I was I had a headache, I was dehydrated, it had been a long weekend. But, got a text from a friend. It's like, hey, we're going down to the bar. And I said, I'll just show up for a minute or two. We'll just hang out and say hi. It'll end out the con because I'm exhausted. But I went down there and stayed for hours because people just kept coming stopping by, sitting at the table, and talking. New people rotating in and out. Just talking and saying hi, making connections, talking about Star Trek. Making connections that were about activism. You know, I talked about that earlier, but I met other people like, oh, we'll connect, we'll talk about doing activist stuff, and try and make things better. And we just spoke for such a long time. One of my favorite moments was I spoke to Heather Ray, who I mentioned earlier, who's a great activist. You know, she just grabbed me and hugged me as she was leaving and said, "You do wonderful work. You're a wonderful person, part of this community." And I looked at her and said the same. And it just means so much to me that this just feels like a family. There was other people too that came over from other tables to say hi to me, who are fans of my work. And that meant so much to me. That I was able to be approachable, that people felt comfortable saying hi to me, because it means so much to me to hear that. It means so much to me to know you all out there who appreciate what I do. And it's just, I feel it right back for everyone, because we're all equals in this. This all art is, all Star Trek is, all any art is, all the things that I make and do. It's just conversations that we're having. You know, we make a work of art to have a conversation, to say something. And we're just trying to build that conversation as human beings in our own ways. And that was honestly, you know, I met heroes this weekend, you know? I met people that I've looked up to, and yet ultimately what it was just people being people and just sharing love of a weird, dorky thing, but more importantly, the values that dorky thing upholds. And not only just sharing love of it, but living it, being it. That's what Star Trek is. That's what humanity is. Caring about others. And I just love this weird, dorky franchise that shares that. So that was my favorite part of the entire weekend, was that time at the bar. Just seeing people. If you were there, because some of you I know might have seen me, might watch this who saw me at the con. If you're one of the people that I spoke to, whether you be the most famous people or just someone who just watches my videos or whatever, just know that you made it special because you are special and your presence is special. If you couldn't make it to the con because capitalism sucks and is expensive to come and time to get away and COVID and all that, like, I understand. So if you were not able to be at the con, know that you are special and that we love you too. We want you to be there. Just be part of the family. You're part of humanity. All of us are family. Even the weird, jerky ones who sometimes say stupid stuff. But that's humanity. It's humanity. And I really loved it. So that was my experience at Mission Chicago. Oh, I just realized video's really long. Screw it. Let me just quick run you through some of the things that I bought, because we're Trekkies, we like merchandise. I'll just show it real quick. I got a Star Trek Discovery pizza cutter. It was very heavy. I'm very excited to open this thing. It says, "This is not a toy. This Discovery will fuck you up if you mess with it wrong." So, pizza cutter Discovery. Whew, crying a little bit. I got this book, The Captain's Log. It's an older book, but it has like a bunch of like interviews and stuff in it, and like magazine articles and things. So I'm going to be using this for my sex and Star Trek research stuff. So this is a good research tool. So very excited to have this. I also got this Geordie Bear that's sitting back here. I got a Tribble that once I put batteries in it will make like cooing noises and like the little like Tribble sounds. You'll probably see this in a video at some point, probably in a very inappropriate sexualized way, but there you go. I got this sticker that says fighting fascism is a full-time job with Shax from Star Trek Lower Decks, which was really wonderful. I don't know why you focus on that. That was really cool. So that's a really wonderful little sticker there. Got this sticker that says Boldly Go, and it's a little trans thing, so I'll probably put that somewhere where it'll be in a video, because Trek and trans, same thing, equivalent. Speaking of gay Star Trek stuff, got this little like rainbow Horgan from Lambda Quadrants, so that's really cool. Little gay little Horgan, because aren't we all little gay little Horgans? Yeah, really deep inside. I handed these out of panels, so I got some posters. So you got my boy Gray there. You got Sneakle beating, like, looking all boss. Got Wilson Cruz, David Ajala, Doug Jones, like all these people. Anthony Rapp, Mary Wiseman, looking all bossing. Just look at them bossing. They're just standing there bossing. Look at that Sneakle Martin Green with her hair just flipping through. Look at that shit. Speaking of which, I got a little Lower Decks poster, so I'll probably be putting up these around my apartment. And then also a Strange New Worlds poster. Being all cool there too. I got this, which I'm opening up right now, but this is the Tribble Eater from Star Trek The Animated Series. So this thing like eats tribbles and even comes with a tribble for it to eat in here. So I haven't really opened it yet, but you can open it up and like stick a tribble inside of its hole, because that's appropriate, right? And you just stick the tribble in there. Feels inappropriate. Got some like really nice badges for my Star Trek cosplay, because what is a Trekkie if not with a person who buys brooches? That was a sentence. Got a Dabo chip that I'm definitely going to be using in a Sex and Star Trek video at some point, so be looking for that. This was my badge to the con. It's a guest one because I was doing panels, even though I bought a pass, so hopefully I can get a refund because I didn't actually use the pass that I paid for. I just used the guest one, so maybe I'll be able to get my money back. We'll see if they'll let me. Capitalism is great. Also got this purse because Jessie needed a Star Trek purse, because if I'm going to go out clubbing, I need people to at least know that I'm a Trekkie. God, I'm a dork. I also got this backpack that I'm going to use to carry film equipment in to like shoots and stuff. It's a very nice hefty little bag, so that's really cool. It's got the little Star Trek stripes and stuff. It's got like a kind of Klingon-y look, very nice interior, so that's very cool. And most of those were relatively cheap things, but I did splurge a little bit on this thing that you're going to see me putting on right now that I'm like trying to smoothly, nope, this is not going to be a smooth endeavor. I'm gonna get it. I swear to God, I can get my hand. This is the most like autism spectrum thing. Like trying to figure out how to put on a freaking coat smoothly. Anyways, now that I have this on, like I said, those things are mostly cheap like things that I bought, but I did splurge a little bit on this coat, which is a sort of next generation style coat, but it's like subtle. It's not like overt like this is Star Trek, but if you know, you know. But it's also like very Star Trek. Also has like a little feminine gut cut, so like super affirming. Like gotta get my affirming Star Trek clothing. Gotta affirm my gender with my Trekkie clothing. But yeah, no, it's a really nice coat. So I splurged a little bit on it. It was a little bit more than I intended to spend. But I figured hell screw it. Spend money on things that make you happy. Don't hoard money. Don't hoard happiness. We were told to hoard happiness in our life, and I'm just like, no, you know what? Even though I probably shouldn't waste the money, I will splurge a little bit on myself, because treat yourself. But the last little thing, and to wrap out this video that I got, that I had to get, was I got a little Trip Tucker away mission figurine. These are a line of like Star Trek figures. I collect a bunch of figures, but the only ones that I'm like, I really want all of them at some point are the Star Trek Enterprise figures, because these are really nice figures. Also Star Trek Enterprise. So I got my little boy Trip. Got a little southern boy Trip Tucker, that's gonna go right on that shelf right over there with all the other Star Trek Enterprise figures. I got my Scotty Bats, I got my, Travis and all that stuff, T'Pol over there. So I had to get Tucker, because he was one that I was definitely missing of those characters, but I want to get them all. So if you have any leads on this, like these line of Enterprise figures, please let me know, because I want them all. But now I got a little Trip Tucker. Okay, so that's it. That was this video of me just telling you my con experience. One of the most meaningful experiences of my life. Like I said, it reminded me to be human. It reminded me why I love humanity, why I love Star Trek, why I love everything. This video is not intended to be this freaking long. I did not intend to make it this long, but you know what? Screw it. It's not like this was going to be an algorithm-winning video anyways, and I'd rather just share with those of you who care the experience and what it meant to me, and why it meant so much to me, and why it helped change my life. And also my cat Newt was here, so I'm gonna bid you all adieu. I'm actually gonna go have dinner now. Mwah. Love you all. We'll talk later. I hope you all live long and prosper.